And welcome back to Around the Waves on KCOU 88.1 FM Columbia. I'm Luca Vitale, alongside me, Ryan Waelterman, Ben Schmidt. All right, let's get to the NFL. A third of the season is gone, which means I would say there's enough sample size to start drawing some conclusions about what we've seen so far. So the NFC sort of presents itself as a conundrum, which basically the East has three legitimate contenders as of right now in other Super Bowl favorites that were going into the season, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Rams. They're all struggling right now with some serious flaws. But meanwhile, you got the AFC that's filled with this sort of assortment of teams that have their ups and downs. And one of those teams that have ups and downs are the Baltimore Ravens. So, Ben, do you think the Baltimore Ravens, are they contenders or pretenders?
I think the Ravens are contenders for sure, and they do have some flaws that scare me a little bit. But overall, I'll get to what I think makes them good. AFC, I think we agreed coming into the season, was the better conference, but it's been an even wider margin. I think we even expected.
Yes.
The NFC has been worse, and the AFC, I mean, it's maybe around what we expected out of them with all the young quarterbacks that they have on that conference. I mean, you pretty much knew that they were going to be good. And if you look across the landscape, there's a lot of teams out of the conference that make the playoffs. I mean, looking at it right now, the AFC East has three teams in it. Like, I don't know, the Patriots are really good, but they're 3-3 right now. That's a playoff contending team at the moment. The North has a couple. The South is kind of all average with the Titans and the Colts. And then the West, obviously the Chargers and the Chiefs are both playoff contenders, and the Broncos are completely dead. So the AFC has a lot of good teams, and I think the Ravens are one of them. Rashad Bateman, their only real non-Mark Andrews downfield passing weapons, is set to return this week. He put up a first 2 weeks of the season against the Jets.
What about
and
Deshaun
the
Jackson?
Dolphins.
He'll be there, right?
He's like 48 years old. I drafted him in fantasy for like
Did you
8 straight
actually?
years. No, not this.
I was
Like
gonna say.
8 straight years when he was good, but I don't think he's good anymore. So I mean, he'll have like one target a game, 40 yards downfield, and sometimes he'll catch it, sometimes he won't. But Rashad Bateman's going to make an impact on this offense, that's for sure. I've really liked him all the way out of Minnesota, and I hope he can stay healthy because that's been a little bit of a problem for him his first 2 years. But a healthy Rashad Bateman, I think, is a good weapon in this offense. The Ravens in every single game this year have led by double digits. And I know you could kind of look at this both ways. Maybe it's an alarm that they've blown those leads, but also I think they're really close to putting that closing piece together, and then maybe they figured out. A couple weeks ago, the narrative was the Bills cannot win a close game. They had lost like 7 straight close games. Now I think the Bills have kind of really taken that in stride and won a couple close games the last couple weeks and look great. I think the Ravens are maybe the next thing if they can just figure it out. They were really good at it a couple seasons ago, figured out this year how to kind of close games out, and they'll be really, really good. And out of their losses this year, I still think that they were the better team than the Giants. They just kind of imploded at the end. Lamar made a throw that I was kind of untypical of Lamar, and I don't think he'll make that in a situation again. And out of the 2 other losses against the Bills and the Dolphins, that's probably a situation where if you average that out over time, you probably should win one of those games and lose one of those games. It's not often I think you get unlucky enough to lose, both the way they lost to the Dolphins, all the points late, and then the not scoring in the red zone and the Bills going all the way down and scoring. So they're really close to being a 5-1 team right now, and I think that they're talented enough to be that. They're just disguised as a 3-3 team. Lamar's been putting up incredible numbers, and a big thing too for Baltimore, starting in November, they go on a stretch of games where they could really start to roll, and it would not be shocking me if they're sitting there at some point with like a 10-4 record. They're going to get the Panthers, the Jaguars, the Broncos, and then I know it's a division game, but they have the Steelers twice, and I think that they're much better than the Steelers. Even though the Steelers just beat the Bucs, I still think they're much better than the Steelers. So that's a stretch of games, and there's even a couple more I didn't throw in there where the Ravens could really take off and I think start to really put pressure on the Bengals to keep up in this division. And in this division, it really is between them and the Bengals. The Steelers and Browns aren't threats, and the Ravens already do have a tiebreaker for the moment. They don't play again until the final week of the season. So if the Ravens really go on that stretch and pull away here, you're looking at a Baltimore team that could win the division and get a home playoff game, and you're automatically a contender at that point because you would have the home field advantage in the first round, and then if you win that, you're on to the second round and beyond. So I view this Ravens team, although their secondary scared me a couple weeks ago, I think it has gotten better than I thought. They looked really good against Cincinnati, and I know that they were missing T. Higgins essentially in that game, but still, I thought overall they looked good against Cincinnati. Cincinnati last week. I thought pass defense was good again. I know they're facing a bunch of nobodies with the Giants, but I'm seeing some signs of this team. They haven't broken out yet, but I think they're really close to becoming one of the better teams in the league. And we're kind of searching right now. It feels like we're searching for who is the next best team after the Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles. It's those three, and then it's everyone else. And I think the Ravens, although I don't think they're as good as those three, could ascend and get closer to that mark as we get further on into the season.
I'm going to disagree with you. I do not think the Ravens are contenders. I think we have been so blind by some of the flaws that they really have. I mean, granted, the other week it was the secondary. You're 100% right. But the penalties have been a very big problem. And last year they were one of the least penalized teams in the league. This year they're one of the most, and the offensive line has been a disaster. I mean, obviously, when you have that many issues and injuries, I get that. But at the end of the day, there's too many holding penalties and too many delay of games, and that's a big problem. And the blown leads is ridiculous, okay? I feel like Lamar is a very talented quarterback. There is no doubt about it. But he has disappeared a lot in the fourth quarter this year. I mean, he started like on fire in the beginning of the season, but now it seems like he has started to fade out a little bit. I mean, he gives us his magic, and then all of a sudden he turns into like Fitz tragic. It's tragic sometimes in the fourth quarter for Lamar. I mean, he pulls out of the rabbit out of the hat, and the rabbit can't get back out, and there's no more rabbit. So, I mean, listen, we understand his athleticism. It's definitely something that has revolutionized, the game, but sometimes his throws are definitely mind-boggling to me because, yes, someone can argue he has a lack of receivers. I mean, when you say Devin Duvernay is your best wide receiver when Rashad Bateman is out, that is a big problem. I'm not going to count Mark Andrews, by the way, as a wide receiver because he's a tight end. But listen, the running game has struggled a lot, too. I mean, I did not expect going in the season the running game to look this bad. I mean, do not get me started with J.K. Dobbins and how many issues that he has had throughout the season. I mean, you're going to get Gus Edwards back sooner rather than later. Justice Hill will be back. Kenyon Drake, we'll see how this starts to play along. J.K. Dobbins right now is questionable going into the weekend, so we'll see how that plays along. But, the fourth quarter leads is what gives me cause to pause because they blew a 20-point lead against Miami in the fourth quarter, and you expected Lamar to rescue you. Now, this past weekend, you can definitely blame Lamar in the fourth quarter because there is no reason as to why he could have not shown up in that fourth quarter because, in my opinion, he did not show up. And there is no excuse either because they outgained the Giants almost by 200 yards, and they still lost. So, can they make the playoffs? I mean, Ben, with the schedule you just gave me, yes, they can. But as of right now, as we're talking right now, they are pretenders.
I think that Giants game is a game where if you look back.
And by the way, we need to stop saying the Giants. They're 5-1. Let's start giving respect.
Oh, I still think the Ravens. And this is not disrespect to the Giants. The Ravens outplayed the Giants for 55 out of 60 minutes and just had a couple key mistake. I say key mistake. Lamar, that throw, you cannot make that throw. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That was a horrible throw. He's got to just throw that away or slide down and bounds and force New York to use a timeout or drain the clock. Cannot make that throw. But I think come November, I think that's a game that the Ravens would beat the Giants in that scenario. It was just and I don't want to keep chalking it up to this. How many times again is Tua going to throw for 6 touchdowns? And the Ravens, I think. I really do think that they're close, and I know the penalties is a big deal too. Actually, I looked even more what we were talking about. Their Ravens are since 2010 are the 10th most penalized team in the entire league. So this has been a problem for a very long time now. Yeah. So I think that's just something that's just going to exist as time keeps going on. But the Ravens. And maybe it's another thing like 2 years ago where they look really good in the regular season and aren't real contenders when we get in the playoffs. But I just. There certainly is enough talent here for me to think that they're going to figure it out and figure out a way to put away these close leads, especially when you add another weapon on offense coming back.
I feel like this is a trap question to me simply because my Packers are also 3-3.
They're a bad team.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I wanted to say yes because of the schedule, Ben, but I'm going to say no strictly because of the way they've played. And Luca took a lot of the words out of my mouth. No, you're fine. It's obvious stuff. It's the way they've played in the fourth quarter, and I just can't trust that team. I mean, I think they've maybe blown 4 out of 5 of the games they've already played.
It's been a lot, Ben. At least it's 3, right? 3 fourth quarter leads?
It's at least 3 fourth quarter leads.
Well, yeah, and all 3 of their games they've led by 10-plus points.
Oh my!
They led by 10-plus against the Dolphins. They were up.
They could be 5-1 right now.
Like pretty easy. The Dolphins.
Up by 20.
The biggest was 35-14, I believe.
Yeah.
And then the Bills. That one was 20-0. And then
20-0.
the Ravens. They were the Giants. I keep mixing Ravens. The Giants. They were up
10,
10-13.
So it's 3 blown leads in the fourth.
Yeah,
quarter.
all 3. They're 3-3. All 3 are blown leads.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
But I'm not saying that they can't fix that. And if they do fix that, I do think this team can be a playoff contender. But I honestly really believe that only one team is going to come out of this division, and I think it's going to be Cincinnati. Even though they haven't played that good, I think they'll be able to figure it out. They haven't gave up many leads in the fourth quarter. This team just worries me. And obviously with Lamar Jackson's horrible decision late in the fourth quarter last weekend, kind of worries me. Will he do that again? I know you would think maybe he wouldn't, but you never know at Lamar. This team really, I know I say it all the time, but this team's really only going to go as far as he can take them, and the defense has just looked god-awful in the fourth quarter. So they have to figure out the fourth quarter woes, and if they don't, this team's not going to the playoffs.
Well, I'm not exonerating the offense either in the fourth quarter. They haven't done much either in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is where the Ravens are going to come back in the offseason and say, well, you're not going to get paid more because, well, you weren't clutch in the fourth quarter. This is where the negotiations after the regular season are going to come to a halt because, remember, Lamar decided to basically bet on himself. He went out there. He looked really good in the first couple of weeks, and he's sort of tailed off in the last couple of weeks. This is where this is going to come back to bite him later in the off season.